Hi, this is Christy Boertes. I wanted to make this video because I found a really excellent short little clip about an admiral in the US being questioned over the inconsistencies in the way that the COVID virus has been handled and the laws that have been put in place in various states with regards to this virus. I just wanted to say before I continue that my views on COVID is that it's a real thing. I'm not a denier of that. I just question the stats and whether it is as deadly as we're being told. One of the first things that caused me to question the death count was the fact that in South Africa I was starting to hear about people dying, but not necessarily dying of COVID, yet on the death certificates it was declared as COVID. So people I know personally that have personally told me accounts. I know of a person that committed suicide who died of COVID. I know of a lady that was 99 who broke her hip and died of COVID. I know of a person that was murdered and shot and died of COVID. And the other one had lethal, very advanced lung cancer who died of COVID. And we are now being told that anybody who dies, whatever the causes were, if they are then tested and they have COVID in their system, they are therefore declared as having died from COVID, which I think is irrational completely and makes no sense. So let's have a look at this video and understand that this is happening everywhere. It's happening in the UK. These reports are coming in from everywhere of the double standards of the way that this whole pandemic is being run.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Giroir, what's more important, going to church or protesting?
I'm a public health person. I'm not going to say what's more important, but both need to have protection by the guidelines.
Democrats don't think that. Democrats think protesting is a lot more important than going to church. We got a story from Governor Northam. 16 people go to a sanctuary that holds 225 people. They get cited. Nothing happens to thousands and thousands of people who protest not maintaining social distance and not wearing a mask. How about this one? What's more important, going to a loved one's funeral or protesting?
We absolutely need to be consistent in the way we apply things, and there's obviously some inconsistency.
That's because the First Amendment is the First Amendment, not just parts of it, right?
That's
Mayor de Blasio, when New Yorkers who had gathered to mourn a Hasidic rabbi, he said this: my message to the Jewish community and all communities is this simple: the time for warnings has passed. I've instructed the NYPD to proceed immediately to summons them. You go to someone's funeral, you're going to get arrested, but you can protest in the streets, not maintain social distancing. How about this one? What's more important, engaging in your livelihood, running your business, or protesting?
Again, you're having a rhetorical question there. We get your point. I think public health practice.
Well, you might get my point, but this is the problem. Democrat governors, Democrat mayors don't. Mayor Garcetti said this. He said he was going to turn off people's utilities, shut off utilities if anyone tried to reopen their business. Unbelievable. And yet, Mayor Garcetti, here's what else Mayor Garcetti said. He said, back in April, he said, snitches will be rewarded. What's more important, Admiral, rewarding snitches for ratting out their neighbor who goes to an empty beach, or actually having the police stop rioters and looters and big groups destroying national monuments and protesting and destroying private property? Which one do you think of those is more important?
Well, let me make a statement that public health standards need to be consistently applied. And when they're inconsistently applied, there's going to be a lot of frustration among the people who are trying to apply.
No kidding. And we have seen the height of inconsistency from Democrat mayors, Democrat governors all over this country.
This highlights the double standards that are taking place. And in South Africa, we have seen these double standards as officials have flouted regulations and made really very irrational laws that make no sense and are not particularly keeping us safe. There is also a double standard in certain areas where laws are enforced strictly, and in other areas this is not happening at all. what worries me about this is especially the way that the Constitution has been trampled over, and that our laws are being bypassed because we're in a state of disaster, and excuses are being made for, destroying fundamental freedoms and human rights for the sake of this virus. And as long as they keep declaring that we are in a state of disaster, they continue to be able to do the law whatever they choose. And this is a very frightening thing to see, because basically our country is descending into a place that has no rule of law. He mentions empty beaches, and I have to just tell you a story about what happened to us here. About 2 weeks into the lockdown, one of the things Ramaphosa, our president, said was that we would be free to be able to go and get essentials and necessary things, including food. So in our family, my boyfriend is a spear fisherman, and we felt, well, this is perfectly within our right. We're not putting anybody in danger. It's a very isolated sport. And he went to go and do some spear fishing to catch fish for our family. He went with a friend of his, and they took precautions, as they should have. And what was so annoying about this, and this is where he's talking about the snitching and people being rewarded for it, was that my boyfriend had gotten out the car. He had caught his catch, and he was waiting for his friend to get out of the sea to make sure he got out safely. And this is also where I would say entitlement. If you ever talk about an entitled person, this has to be it. This old man who was sitting on his balcony with nothing better to do, we later found out, hunkering down in his holiday home, very well off, holiday home that overlooks the ocean, starts shouting at him from his balcony about how he needs to be indoors and this is so dangerous and he's putting everybody at risk, and he called the police. So the police came along before my boyfriend's friend had gotten out the sea, and they gave him a fine, told him he can carry on with what he's doing. But this is the kind of ridiculous rules that were put in place, which were not being applied in other areas. In our local township, I went in there. In fact, I just went in there yesterday, and I've got friends in there, and they are not living by the regulations at all. I can't say that I'm necessarily opposed to that, because they have a right to choose freedom of movement, that's what I feel. And we haven't seen a massive outbreak there. Yes, the numbers there are higher, but it's not massive. And as far as I know, there've been no deaths there either, unless, of course, the person was shot.
What do you think is more important, Admiral? The president cutting off travel to China, where this pandemic started, at an early date, or Joe Biden calling that same action xenophobic? Which is more important?
Restricting travel from China and then Europe was really critical steps for us to slow the infusion of infected individuals into the country.
No kidding. Not xenophobic, was it? Just a smart move.
I have not seen any xenophobia in any of our discussions. We're trying to make decisions based on public
Democrats
health.
sure saw it way back when the president made a decision that everyone else criticized. Democrats sure saw it. Democrats are defending the World Health Organization. It's probably more important that we not give money to an organization that lies to us than to continue to support them. What do you think is more important? Continue to give money to the World Health Organization who lied to us about the start of this pandemic, or maybe cutting off the money to the World Health Organization, Admiral?
As the U.S. representative to the executive board of the World Health Organization, it's clear that the organization needs reforms, and I will work with the administration to try to implement those reforms while preserving some very important global public health.
How about
What I did is I went and looked at the World Health Organization's website to find out who the contributors are, the main contributors are to the World Health Organization. And I thought that you would find this quite interesting. I certainly did. At the top there, we have the Bill and Melinda Foundation. Geez, these guys are everywhere. He really is very, very invested in this pandemic situation. Next, we have the United States of America. And, of course, we know that they're pulling out, which I think is actually a wise thing to do, since the World Health Organization has lied and certainly seems to have political affiliations in some rather dodgy places. But this is the one I found most interesting. And this relates to South Africa as well. So let's take a look. Solidarity Fund, the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund, which, as you may recall, Ramaphosa was calling us all to support. And we have these families supporting the Solidarity Fund. So it would appear that the Solidarity Fund is not actually going to the people, which we have seen. It's really barely gone to the people of South Africa. But here we find them supplying the WHO with money. This is from Financial Fin24, talking about the billions that have apparently been donated to the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund. So announced at right at the beginning, I'm sure you will remember that Cyril Ramaphosa announced that many people are going to be giving huge amounts of money to the Solidarity Fund, which was going to help all of us. So didn't happen. Let's have a look at who the big players were who announced that they were going to give huge sums of money. So there we see 1 billion from Nikki and Jonathan Oppenheimer, announced on March 23rd. If we go down, the next one we see is 1 billion from Mary Oppenheimer and daughters, announced. Next one, 1 billion from the Motsepe family and associated businesses, announced on March 28th. Next one, 1 billion from the Rupert family and Remgro Limited, announced on March 23rd. And 1.5 billion from Naspers, announced on March 30. What is so concerning to me about the figures, about these families and funds that supplied money for the Solidarity Fund is, first of all, we've got 3, I think, was it 3? Oppenheimers, the Ruperts, and Naspers, all donating $1 billion, $1.5 billion. They were white. These are white families. And what happened with the Solidarity Fund, that in the end, white people were excluded from any assistance whatsoever. In fact, the government actively tried to shut down and clamp down on even white people giving each other food. And that's a fact. You can go and look that up. That did actually happen. Now, what is so interesting is that these families never said a word, never came out and said, our money should be going to everybody. They weren't concerned about this. So what is that about? The Motsepe family, most noticeably, are very, very pro and are fighting to get 5G pushed out in our country. So these are the big players who contributed this much money. Naspers is very well known for their media across Africa. So basically, we've got a company that controls pretty much all mainstream media in Africa. It really makes me go, what the heck is going on here? I've come to understand that in order to understand what is going on in the world, you've got to follow the money. You've got to follow the people that are funding what is going on in the world. So here we have Bill Gates rushing over into South Africa to convince our president that he needs to lock down our country, basically send us on a spiral into economic destruction as a solution to our problem. And here we have him in the WHO, funding the WHO in a massive way. And here we find our impoverished, struggling country funding the WHO. We've got Trump pulling out of the WHO because they have lied. So what the heck is going on here? And why is Bill Gates everywhere I go? He just seems to have money in this. He's heavily invested in proving that we are in this massive pandemic. I mean, we all know he's been predicting for years that we're going to have a massive pandemic that's going to kill the population. He, through his Event 201, predicted that we were going to see 200 million deaths if a coronavirus were to break out. Within a month, we see coronavirus breaking out. I mean, do you think this can possibly all be coincidence? I don't. I think there's just something very weird going on here. And it's got a lot to do with vaccines. Understand, I'm not opposed to vaccines at all. What I'm opposed to is allowing something to be put into my body that hasn't been properly tested, that could be deadly, that could have a microchip of some kind. And I know that sounds crazy, but when you really start looking into the science, they can have microchips that are minuscule that they can put into your system. And they, you know, there's a lot of concern around this, and I would just prefer to know what is in this vaccine. You know, fortunately, the UK have got a watchdog that it's been approved that if a vaccine comes out, they will be allowed to test it thoroughly to see exactly what is in that vaccine. I don't think we're going to be afforded the same privilege here in South Africa.
What's more important, requiring committee members to wear a mask in a committee hearing when they're 10 feet apart from anyone else, or not sending COVID-positive people back into nursing homes? Which is more important?
That's a public health determination, and I will say it's definitely more important not to send COVID-positive people.
No kidding. Especially, and probably it's more important not to do it for 46 days than to do it for even one day, right?
Yes, sir.
And is it probably important when we're dealing with a pandemic that we actually get the information from the people who engage in that behavior, like the governor of the state of New York, who for 46 days sent COVID-positive people back into nursing homes? Might it be helpful if he would actually give us that information?
Information is always the basis for which we can understand what's happened and how to avoid it in the future. Yes, sir.
And I've been following Worldometers as my guide for the numbers around the world. I want to show you some very interesting things about what is going on, especially in the US with the death numbers. I'm not talking here about infections. I want to see how deadly this virus is, because we all get the flu every year. The question is this thing actually as deadly as we are being made to believe? And also, which states have been involved with actively, almost you could say, promoting a higher death count? Take a look. So how many deaths they've had, how many recoveries, and let's have a look at the states. This is what is most interesting to me. Let's have a look at the states with the highest death rates. So we've got New York, astounding. California, 1,000. Illinois, 7,000. Massachusetts, go down a bit, 8,300. Pennsylvania, 7,000. So I'm looking at the highest ones. Michigan, 6,300. From there, the others are all a lot lower. Take notice of those names. Of the states where they did this, where these states did this thing of putting COVID positive patients into nursing homes after they knew full well that the most vulnerable part of the population was the elderly. The 5 states that did this were New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California, and Michigan, and action is now being taken against these states. I want you to also just have a look at who is governing these states. Now, understand in America, the governors have freedom to decide on the regulations for their state. New York is Democratic. California, Democratic. New Jersey, Democratic. Illinois, Democratic. Massachusetts, Democratic. Pennsylvania is the only one that's a Republican, but described as a liberal Republican state. Michigan, Democratic. Connecticut, Democratic. And in my stats that I mentioned, all of these states have the highest death rate. So what are they up to? Why are they trying to prove that so many people are dying of this? Why do they want us to have so much fear over this virus? And as I say, I'm not denying that the virus is deadly. I'm not denying that it exists. I'm not denying that, arguing that it's a problem. But something very weird is going on here. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope that you will subscribe to my channel so that I can start to be monetized, and this will help to support it going forward. And please like and share to let the world know a bit more about what is going on.